Atal FDP on robotics. The expert for this session is Mr. Sushil Mane, who is working as a technical director at Altair Engineering India in Bangalore. He has more than 20 years of experience in the CAE field, and the title for this session today is CAE for Robotics or Mechatronics. So I now hand it over to Mr. Sushil Mane to kindly start with the session, sir. So please go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Professor Shirish Mane. I am. It's a great pleasure for me to be part of this FDP program, and thanks to you as well as the organizers for inviting me to present on this forum. So I hope I'm audible. Um,
Yes, sir.
yeah. Okay. So, a very good morning to everyone in this particular program. And as the title suggests here, C for robotics and mechatronics is the most trending topic as far as engineering product design is concerned in the current scenario. And this is the right time to actually understand all the different components of this workflow or the product development workflow that we say. And it is good to understand this process so that we can implement in all these complex systems that we are going to see now as well as in the near future. But before I dive into the topic, I would like to give you a brief introduction about the company that I work for. Altair is a global company in the field of product design and consulting. We are into software development of all these design simulation tools. And on your slide, you would see probably the vision of our company. Jim Scapa, the founder and CEO of the company, has stated this vision of having to transform customer decision making with simulation, data analytics, and high performance computing. And as the vision rightly suggests there, it is not just numerical simulations as we are all well aware of, but there's a lot of data analytics which is also coming into the picture now because of a lot of data that we have generated either through simulations of the products that we design or through data that we have generated by doing testing. So this valuable data that we have right now is very much suitable for having to deep dive and build what we call as machine learning models, which can be used for doing data prediction or data prescription analysis for such kind of complex systems. And to do all this, either let's say numerical simulations or data analytics, you will need high performance computing, right? And all these three put together are the key components of doing product design right now. To do all this, Altair has a broad solutions portfolio. There are tools which are part of the design and modeling visualization tools, all to do with pre-processing of your digital models. We have physics simulations with regards to various types of physics that you would want to simulate, whether it is structural analysis that you want to do, or maybe fluid simulations, that is computational fluid dynamics, or maybe doing impact analysis, as in the case of, let's say, explicit solvers, or doing electromagnetic simulations, as in the case of all these electronic systems, and so on. So those are all the different capabilities that you would need to do simulations for, and Altair has those various toolkits available in Altair's products. And then data analytics, as I told you before in the previous slide, we have generated a lot of data, right? Either in the form of numerical simulations or the data that we have generated using testing of all our physical systems. So this valuable data can be used to build machine learning models, right? And these ML models can then be used for doing predictive analytics, right? So that is one of the core solution portfolio in Altair. On the bottom left, you'll see Internet of Things. With all the connected systems which are coming into the play right now, you will need to connect all these physical systems, and these systems would then talk to each other, right? So either wired or through the cloud, we have a lot of these different platforms, IoT platforms, which can be used to build these connected systems. You would need high performance cloud computing to do all these large scale simulations. So either you would need, let's say, a physical appliance where you can run all your numerical simulations, or you would also run these simulations on the cloud. So we have both the solutions for all this high performance computing that you would need. And then apart from all these, Altair may not have, let's say, all the solution toolkits for different physics, right? So in order to make available all these complex simulation platforms, which are not developed by Altair, but by third-party companies, with the help of this Altair Partner Alliance product portfolio, Altair has made available all these different third-party simulation tools, which will be used as part of the Altair licensing toolkits. So the engineers who actually work to develop such kind of complex products will not only get Altair products to work on, but even third-party simulation tools. Okay. So this, in short, is the broad solutions portfolio. And to kind of give you details of all these different products, you will see that there are Altair HyperWorks solutions, as well as uh, the solid thinking portfolio, and then KnowledgeWorks and the PPS platform. So we have the design, modeling, and visualization tools, the physics solvers, whether it is structures or maybe CFD or electromagnetics, and so on. We have the simulation-driven design tools, which are more specific to the designer community, wherein they can not only design or optimize their products, but they can even do a manufacturing feasibility checks by doing for different manufacturing processes, whether it is sheet metal, casting, injection molding, and so on. Under the Altair KnowledgeWorks platform, we have data intelligence tools, which are basically to help you to read in data from different sources, process that data, build machine learning models, and then use those machine learning models to do predictive analysis. Internet of Things, different products which will help you to connect to physical systems, extract data from those physical systems using sensors, and then do various dashboardings or uh, uh, outputs that you would need to look at, and then process that, and then retune your system to perform better, and so on. And then, of course, high performance cloud computing. Okay. So with that introduction, I would like to start this presentation with basically to set the context as far as this particular topic is concerned. On robotics, I have taken this definition of robotics from Wikipedia. And as you would see here on the left, just to define what is robotics, it's an interdisciplinary research area at the interface of computer science and engineering. It involves design, construction, operation, and use of robots. And the goal of robotics is to design intelligent machines that can help and assist humans in their day-to-day lives and keep everyone safe, right? So it basically involves not just one engineering discipline. Typically, let's say you would see mechanical, but there is also a play of computer engineering, electronics engineering, and so on, right? And as far as the applications of robotics is concerned, there are various applications, but I've just listed a few here. These robots work alongside humans in manufacturing plants. They offer companionship to elderly individuals. They are right now being used for surgical assistance. They are the last mile package and food order delivery as well. You would also see some of these robots being used in landmine detectors in war zones as well. right? So the kind of applications that you would see here are very, let's say, dangerous, let's say, environments, as well as very delicate environments, as in the case of, let's say, surgical environments, right? Meaning biomedical applications. So robots play a great role in assisting humans to work in such environments where you would need greater finish and delicacy, as well as in hazardous environments, right? So with that introduction, let me start with this topic on smart product development, which is what we would need to design and develop such kind of robotic systems. Okay. So what is this smart product development? Okay. Uh, as you all very well know, the global evolution is towards now smart and connected everything, right? It is all about designing and developing such systems which will allow you to extract live information from these systems, right? And the whole idea is that users now, or customers, want us to think for our products. So you basically have such kind of complex systems which you want these systems to think for themselves, right? And that's why it makes it smart. We also are seeing a strong user experience with integrated controls, electronics and mechanical functions, which are driving this product value. The whole idea of having to actually have these strong user experiences is a need, and therefore it has transformed from what we have seen in the past of some of these products. The value of these products are increasing because experiences. Whether it is, let's say, your connected car, wherein you can interact with your car to turn on and off your ACs, for example, or maybe the radio, or doing various complex systems, let's say functions, by just talking to the particular system, and that system is acting for you, right? So for this, you need a very strong user experience so that you can interact with your system. Now, apart from that, these systems are not only driven by simulation, but even driven by data. Because since most of these systems are complex and are connected, you're actually, with the help of sensors, you're getting a lot of these data from the systems. And with this data, you can actually build machine learning models or create digital twins. And with the help of this, you can actually drive the design, and also the operational decision is what you can do with the help of this kind of simulation or data driven models. Apart from this, you will need a massive exploration of ideas to do all this, right? And which needs high performance computing, right? So with this kind of, let's say, convergence that we are seeing right now between simulation, data analytics, and high performance computing, we will be able to address this evolution towards smart and connected everything. Okay. So as I explained in the previous slide, today's products are complex and integrated, right? And it is a kind of a system of systems, wherein there are so many systems in our product that they are from a different domain. And right now, as you see in most of these products, many of the developers are actually designing such systems in silos. What I mean is, let's say the embedded engineer is actually developing his embedded controls by himself, actually looking at its interaction with the other systems that it has to actually drive. Same way, the battery system, or maybe the suspension system, right? And many other systems which make part of the whole system. And it is not just a particular system that we are talking about. This particular system has to interact with the environment. So a car to car communication, for example, would need a very integrated design and simulation environment wherein it can discuss or interact with multiple systems across the environment. So it is not just controls or maybe the structures or maybe the thermal, noise and vibration or safety, which are designed or simulated in silos. It is all about breaking these walls and trying to interact with multiple systems which are part of this whole integrated system that we have to look at, right? So it is this transformation of the product development from the current traditional approach to what we call as smart product development is what we have to address to. Which basically can be segregated into these 5 components for the product development. One is the product design, which is what we currently are doing. That is, we are building the CAD of a particular product, doing the generative design or doing a design optimization, and then doing rapid prototyping, right? And then we are doing a lot of simulations on this product, whether it is the structural simulation or electromagnetics or the PCB simulation or the motion simulations, right? And this is basically to validate your product, right? And during the course of multiple iterations or optimization, you're trying to improve the performance of that product. But apart from this, you would need to build intelligence into the system, and that is where the electronics or the computer science comes into play. So this embedded development, wherein you will have to design and develop, let's say, the PCBs, which will help you to interact with your physical systems, is what has to be addressed. And therefore, the HIL simulation or SIL simulations are the key components of this particular portfolio. Apart from that, software development has to also come into picture here, because you need strong user experiences, as I mentioned before, and the devices have to be managed. The devices which are on the edge or on the system have to be managed by these software components. And since you have a lot of these sensors which are planted on the physical systems, and these sensors are extracting a lot of live data, you need data storage, right? Which can be streamed across the enterprise or over the cloud and so on. And then finally, since you now have these embedded systems and the software which is on the device and helping us to extract this data, the whole idea of actually using this data so that you can continuously improve the design is what you have to address to. And therefore, you will need real-time dashboards, machine learning model trainings, and then using this machine learned models to doing data analytics is what addresses the last component of the smart product development. So in this whole process of smart product development, now we have new stakeholders, right? As far as, let's say, the product development is concerned, we have to build smart and connected products. And as they insist on better user experiences, the customers who are actually buying such kind of smart products, they are insisting better user experiences. The whole idea to drive to leverage digital twins is the key focus. They will need to introduce more and more stakeholders, right? So all the product development companies will not only need, let's say, a mechanical engineer, but many other engineers who will now build up such kind of smart products. So these stakeholders are not from one discipline, but from multiple disciplines, having different kind of skill sets to do such kind of product development. We have the IT guy who will help us to manage our infrastructure, right? We will have the DevOps, which will help us to control the flow of code between the IT infrastructure and the software development. We have the software developers who will help us to build web or mobile applications. We have the system integrators, which will help us, who will help us to tie the network together. We will have the embedded developers who will build intelligence into the product. And then finally, let's say data scientists who will then use the data that is coming from the systems to train and build smart models, right? So it is not just one, let's say, stakeholder, but multiple stakeholders who will have a play in this product development. So all these stakeholders need to work together to build a cohesive product experience for the end user who is buying our products. So kind of to accelerate this innovation, the innovation to design such smart products, we will have to have various tool sets, developers who will help us to enable digital twins, do the asset location or tracking, do the asset monitoring, do the edge compute management, build the ML model training or calibrations, and so on, right? So we will need all the toolkits as well as engineers who will help us to accelerate this innovation. And not just Altair, but there are companies who will help us to give this platform wherein this integrated platform will help product developers from different domains come together and interact with multiple systems which are part of those smart products. So with this, there is a lot to be done, right? The whole idea that customers are demanding such smart products would need us to do more with less, right? So to summarize, this product development teams are asked to do a lot today. They need features which are very complex, and these features have to be designed and developed with new skill sets, right? Just a mechanical engineering doing his domain is not going to help. He along with multiple engineers, they have to work together to build such kind of smart products. And all this has to be done using less, right? Spend less resources, spend less time and money on multiple different product platforms. So if you can have a single platform which will allow engineers of multiple domains, not just mechanical, but even electronics, computer science, and so on, who will come together to design and develop such smart systems is what the need of the hour is, right? So to do more with less is, especially in this pandemic situation, a platform which will help engineers interact with each other on a common platform is the need of the hour, right? And that common platform is what Altair also provides, which is what we are going to discuss in the next few slides. Okay. So coming to this point of doing smart product development, there is a certain terminology that we use called as model-based systems engineering. And this model-based systems engineering is going to help us to not only design our systems within a certain domain, but also help to bring in all the different components of this large smart product that we are going to develop into a single platform. I'm going to talk about, let's say, how we can bring in a mechanical domain, an electronics domain, a controls domain into a single platform so that you can interact with each and every component or each and every domain and then design and develop such kind of complex systems. Okay. So this model-based development process can be nicely explained with the help of this V diagram approach that most engineers use, right? It starts with the requirement specifications, which basically talks about what is the requirement of the end user, the customer who is going to use our product. From that requirement specification, we actually define the functions, right? So there are various functions that you'll need to design for, not just the mechanical, but even the electronics, the software, and so on. So you're currently at a very high system level engineering that you have to do, and this will need a system modeling approach. a system modeling approach for each and every domain that you have to address, not just the mechanical, but even electronics, software, and so on. So at this stage where you're designing at a system level and then diving into each and every component that make up that system, each and every engineer, the mechanical engineer, the electronics engineer, and the software engineer are actually designing their particular systems in parallel, right? And during the course of that engineering, there is always a constant interaction between these three, let's say, engineers, the mechanical, electrical, or the computer science engineer. And by doing that, he is able to design it much quicker by sharing his models across the domain or the enterprise. A single platform which will help you to bring in all these models together and then do a kind of a co-simulation between not just uh, mechanical structural simulations, but even the electromagnetic simulations, or maybe the multi-body system simulation, what you can do on this kind of platform. Once that is done, you would need to do a virtual testing, right? And then do a system integration. So there is always this hardware in the loop or software in the loop that you'll have to address to. So in the right hand leg of this V curve, we basically bring all these components together and then do a virtual testing of such complex systems. So this is a typical model-based development process where we follow the V diagram approach, and all the stakeholders of this product development come together on a single platform to exchange their models so that you can do co-simulation and drive the design. To explain that, I have an example which shows you such a process. So let me go back a bit and then show you that this is a very simple robotic application that we are going to design. So the whole, let's say, objective is for this robot to pick a sheet metal component from station A and then place it on station B. Okay, let me rerun that video so that and we have to do a co-simulation here. Okay, the task is to pick up and move a flexible sheet metal from A to B, and the objective is to design motors at J1, J2, and J3 locations of the arms of the robot, for which you will need different software components, the multi-body simulation platform, as well as what we call as Activate, which is a 1D flow diagram approach to doing simulations. Okay. So for that, we start with the motion simulation. So we have to build and validate a rigid system, right? So for which you actually need to do a kinematic analysis so that you can lift up a sheet metal and then place it there. So you system and then do a simulation and then move ahead to do a flexible simulation. For a flexible simulation, of course, you will need to do a finite element analysis in the background to do the accurate deformation analysis. And then finally, once you have done that, we'll have to build a model in Activate to co-simulate that, right? So in this process of lifting a sheet metal and placing it there, the initial MBD analysis will help us to identify what are the forces or torques required to lift up this sheet metal, rotate it in a 360 degrees, sorry, a 180 degrees, and then place it in station B, right? And once you understand what are the forces or torques required at those motor locations, we can then design the motor to give us the right output and drive the system simulation. Okay. So here there is this interaction between MBD analysis, the multi-body dynamic analysis, as well as the controls simulation which is done, which will help us to identify the right kind of forces or torques required for the motor to drive such a mechanism. Okay. So with that simple example, let us understand the different components or the different stages of this V diagram approach to designing such complex systems. So at the left side of the tree diagram, we have the requirement specification, and then we do the functional modeling, which is where you will have to model your system in 0D or 1D. OK. So you have a 0D component wherein you are actually now going to model your complex system in a math or a numerical environment. So for all these systems that we are designing, there is a certain equation, right? An equation based approach to solving a particular problem. So using this first principles method, you can, in this mathematical environment, you can create all your equations and then simulate the condition in a 0D environment. Okay, so we have these platforms called as Compose, which is a math and numerical environment where engineers can create those equations and then solve your complex physics using these equations. Okay. Once you have done that, once you at a very high system level concept stage of your process, you've built up these equations and solve it and get the required output, you would then probably dive into a 1D stage, right? It is at this stage where you would have to uh, create your systems and run your systems at this concept stage by using signal blocks or physical components. So we have environments called as Activate, a software platform which will allow you to use signal blocks or physical components to model your systems and run simulations. Okay. Now, while you're doing that, most of these different components, which are all available in the library, or you can create these different components which make up the signal blocks in different platforms, whether it is, let's say, an MBD software there where you are trying to simulate the multi-body dynamics, or maybe the electromagnetics tool, which will help us to, let's say, design or simulate the the motor simulation and so on. Once you do such kind of simulation in your domain, you can actually create what we call as the FMI or FMU block, right? A functional mockup interface which will allow you to create your FMU, that is a functional mockup unit. And this functional mockup unit is a block that you can bring in into this environment. So I simulation in my MBD environment, and once I've done that, I can actually export that as an FMU block, a functional markup unit block, and bring that into this environment called as Activate, the software that I'm talking about, which will allow you to use these signal blocks or physical components, or maybe even import these FMU blocks using the Modelica library, and then connect all these systems and run the simulation, right? So in this environment, the whole idea is to check is performing to the required specifications. And once you've done that, you're now going to move into the 3D environment. Now, in the 3D environment, you're going to actually create your 3D models and then drive your complex system by connecting all these different components of your system, whether it is the mechanical component or your electrical component and everything into a single platform and then run the simulation, right? So that can be done using this co-simulation between a 1D and a 3D, or maybe a 0D 1D to a 3D. And this is very much possible using the FMI interfaces. Okay. Now, once you're done that, once you have modeled your system, you can now go ahead to do a very detailed 0D, 1D and 3D simulation. The animation that you're seeing on the right side is a complete co-simulation between your 0D and 1D component as well as the 3D components of your whole system. Okay. And then finally, you would also probably need to build a digital twin, right? A digital twin which will help you to connect to a physical system, and then use the data which is coming out of the sensors that you have mounted on your physical system, and use that as an input to your numerical model, and try to let's say correct its behavior in the numerical environment and give the right output so that you can again feed that back into the physical environment. So this hardware in the loop or human in the loop that we are talking about would need a digital twin concept where a digital twin, which is a replica of your physical system, is built, and there is always an interaction between a physical system and the digital twin. Okay. Here is an example of that, which is basically showing you this animation of a platform where you have a ball, and we are trying to basically balance this ball on that platform. And even though you're giving some disturbance to the ball, this controls, which is actually taking the input of the imbalance on the system and doing the simulation in the background using the digital twin and giving the feedback control back to the physical system so that it can rebalance itself and make sure that the ball does not go out of the platform that you see there. So this needs a very connected digital twin, which is all possible now in this kind of platform that we are talking about. So with this, what are the key benefits of doing such kind of product development by using the model-based system engineering approach? The first benefit is that you can now optimize the entire product performance, right? It is not just a particular domain that you have to be sure of, but all the different domains which make up that interdisciplinary, let's say, system that we have to design it for, right? The mechanical system, the electrical system, the control system, and so on. So bringing all these systems together and optimizing the product performance is what is the key benefit of the model-based systems engineering approach. The second benefit is to perform investigations where the experimentation does not exist. We didn't have such kind of experiment in the past, and we want to simulate that kind of experiment in the simulation environment. Or such kind of experimentation is very costly or maybe unethical, as in the case of, let's say, medical applications. You cannot do such kind of investigation on a patient, right? On a human. So how you can actually run such kind of investigations on a numerical model so that you can improve your system performance by doing such kind of simulations, right? The third benefit is to get a very reliable device design, right? And here the requirements for structural strength and durability, or system motion, or controls hydraulics is what you have to address to. And this human machine interaction and the tuning of this interaction is what we have to address. And this needs high reliability of the device. So that can be achieved by doing such kind of model-based system engineering. And then finally, benefit number 4 is a faster time to market. Now, whenever we are having such very complex systems, designing them in silos, whether it is mechanical or electrical or controls and so on, and then bringing them all together will actually extend our product development time. But in this single platform where you can talk to all these multiple domains or stakeholders and design the system as a whole will help us to reduce the product development time and also improve the performance of the whole system, right? So this is one of the key benefits of the model-based systems engineering approach. Okay. So I hope that covered the key concepts of how such smart connected products are currently being designed, and this model-based systems engineering approach will help engineers, stakeholders of this product, to come together on a single platform and co-simulate these complex physics. Okay. Just to give you an idea, I have a few case studies that I wanted to walk you through so that you will understand this approach in greater detail. Okay. The first of these examples is this example that I wanted to show on Sarcos Robotics, which is a company which designs and develops exoskeletons. Okay. These exoskeletons are basically they can be used in various environments, an industrial environment, or maybe in a biomedical applications and so on. Okay. Now, this application that they were designing for was to basically help to lift a very heavy object in the range of 15 kg to 90 kg. But while lifting this heavy object, uh, the, uh, the human who is actually operating that, the person who is going to operate that, should not feel let's say any effect as far as lifting that particular heavy object is concerned. He should not be stressed as far as lifting such heavy objects. One of the key things was to design this ergonomically, and you have to make sure that the safety first features are addressed to. And then the other thing about this robotic application or exoskeleton application was that we need to have a smart control system so that you can detect these movements within milliseconds. The movement of having to lift an object within a millisecond and then place it from station 1 to station B and so on. Okay. Now to design such a system, what we had to do was to come up with and understand the human kinematics with motion capture. So exoskeleton with a human was modeled, and the inverse kinematics and inverse dynamics was simulated for. And what this will allow us to do is understand the complete motion of a typical human being to lift up the heavy object, and understand what are the forces or the torques required at different joint locations. Okay. By doing such inverse kinematics or inverse dynamics, we will be able to understand that. Once you understand that, we can then use an integrated mechatronics that is of the human, the exoskeleton, and the controls to bring everything together and design such a system. Okay. So eventually what happened is we could improve the model interoperability and the speed of collaboration between different groups, not just the mechanical, but even electrical as well as electronics. And then even reduce the prototypes, help us to predict design results, reducing the design and development time, and reduce the time to market significantly along with Sarcos. Okay. So as you'll see here, I hope the audio can run. I'll have to come out of this. Yeah. So as you see here, the human is actually making those movements, and then once you know the movements and understand the complete kinematics or dynamics, you can then attach the exoskeleton to the human or the person, and while lifting the object, the entire weight of the heavy object is transferred to the exoskeleton, while the human is just making those movements, right? So this is a very fantastic application which shows how you can actually use this model-based systems engineering approach of running the controls simulation and then make sure that the whole system works properly. A second example is a biomedical example from Skylift, where our solutions were used to design such complex systems. This is a nursing care lift, which basically addresses the problem of having to lift a patient so that he is having least discomfort while getting up, right? So we had to reduce the physical mental burden by redesigning the lift care experience. So as you see in the video, the lift system is connected to the patient. And once you connect the patient to the lift and it is operated on, it makes sure that the patient has least discomfort in getting up. Okay. I just run this video a little faster. Okay. So I hope you could get this example or case study on the application of this nursing care lift. Now to address the solution part, Skylift, which is the product which was designed by Sonix company based out of Japan, had to use different simulation platforms. They started with the 0D or 1D modeling of the system, wherein the equation-based modeling was done to understand what are the forces, the dynamic forces which are being driven by which are basically driving this whole system. And once you're done that, once you have built the 1D model, block diagram based approach to doing such simulation, and then you can have the different components of the whole system, the MBD system or the motor system, which can be used then to lift this whole nursing care lift. So while the MBD system helps you to understand the kinematic and the dynamic behavior of the care lift, you can have the script-based approach, the 0D model, which will help us to optimize the mechanism of the lift to make its motion to be close to a human natural standing up motion. Okay. And then the integrated mechatronic simulation and the optimization, which will help us to combine the mechanical. Yes.
Excuse me. Many times you are talking about.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you.
0D.
Can you repeat that? I'm not able to hear you. Your voice is breaking. Or you may want to type your question in the chat.
Sir, I have typed in chat box.
Okay.
0D or 1D environment means what?
Okay. So what we mean by a 0D environment is, okay, let me go back here. It's an environment where you can model a complex system using equations. So for example, let's say if I have to model the system and then understand what are the forces at a certain position of this mechanical system to be calculated, right? So once I have a patient fitted to this system and we are trying to lift that patient, you can actually model this entire system using equations. And that is what we call as a 0D system. Okay. By using this equation based simulation, the whole idea is to understand at a very high level, at an early concept stage of this product development, understand what are the forces or let's say the dynamic forces which are coming on this particular system, and how you can tune the system to improve on the performance of that system by using just plain equations. That is what we call as a 0D system. Okay. And what we mean by a 1D system is where you're actually using signal approach or physical components which are available in this kind of platform, this software platform, which will allow you to use a signal based approach, which is all available in the library, or maybe physical components which you can drag and drop from the library, or maybe simulate this entire physics in an actual 3D domain. Let's say if I have to simulate the entire physics of the motion in a 3D environment by using multi-body dynamics, I can simulate that and export that as an FMU, a functional mockup unit. And this functional mockup unit can be imported into this 1D platform, this 1D simulation code, which will bring all these different components into a single environment, use either signal based approach or physical components approach to connect this whole system, which will have different inputs and outputs which can be extracted from the system. Okay. So the whole idea of doing a 0D or a 1D modeling is to quickly run the simulation at a very early stage to understand the feasibility of designing such a structure without you having to actually model a 3D system and then run the simulation, which is all done in different silos. Okay. So if you do that in a 0D or a 1D environment, you can quickly run the simulation and not only do that, but bring in all the different domains into a single platform. Your electronics domain or an electrical domain or the mechanical domain, you can bring that into a single platform and then do a co-simulation. Did I answer your question? I hope you got it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, finally coming to the customer value for this nursing care lift. This company was able to successfully design a new prototype with reduced physical and mental burden by 25% while standing up and 40% for sitting down compared to the conventional design. And you can see that in this graph here. Okay, for a certain position, an XY position, which is plotted here, a normal human to stand up, that can be plotted on a graph which is shown here in green. Okay, the standing up trajectory measured by motion capture is shown in green. Okay, but for a certain patient, the lift trajectory before optimizing the system is shown in blue here. Now, once you use this approach of the model-based systems engineering approach that was discussed in the previous slide, where you connected all the 0D and 1D along with your MBD approach, this company was able to optimize the lift trajectory and then finally get this red curve here, which is almost close to a normal human standing up trajectory. Right? The red curve is close to the green curve. So before optimization, this was the performance which was plotted, but eventually they could get as close to a normal human standing up trajectory. Also on the right side, there is a comparison of EMG, which is the electromyograph, I believe, which is plotted here, shows the RMS EMG, okay, which is basically a plot of the response of your muscles based on the neural input that is given. Okay, so an EMG is nothing but a graph which shows the response from a system, a muscle system. Okay. For a no assist, the RMS response, the RMS EMG is shown in red. A typical conventional, let's say RMS EMG is shown in green, which is of a normal human being. Okay. And then the final proposed EMG curve is shown in blue here. Okay. So they were able to improve the overall efficiency of this nursing care lift by designing such a system where you can fine tune your response by doing a multidisciplinary approach to design. Okay. Here is another example of an industrial system which was designed by ABB. Okay, and the challenge here was to maintain industry-leading reliability of manufacturing robots by improving the fatigue behavior. And the solution which was designed was by using multi-body dynamics to do the CAD data integration and then calculating the kinematics and then doing the optimization of that. And then the system simulation to improve the control parameters by altering the acceleration ramps without sacrificing the productivity. And the whole value which was driven into the system was a completeness in the evaluation of the entire duty cycle of using these robots, an increased fatigue due to reduction of vibrations by 50%, and then transparency, that is to have a deeper insight to faster and improved, let's say, correlation with physical tests. Okay, let me run this video so that you understand the actual application of this robotic system. There is no audio on this particular video, so I think it was in Spanish, so they have just you can read the text on the bottom here. So even in this robotic system, which was a very similar application to the first had run of having to take a particular product from station A and then place it at station B. The entire motion was simulated using multi-body dynamics, and then the control system, which basically understands the entire motion, then provides the right motion to the motors, so that the motors will drive the whole system to pick up object A and then place it from X to a position Y. Okay. And then finally, this one application wherein they actually this was done by MX3D. They actually use the same process of having to apply this multi-body dynamics approach, the system simulation, and then finally get the right dynamic forces, which are then used to design all the different structural components. And as you see in this particular picture on the left side here, these are all the different structural components which had which was initially cast, and they were able to convert that from a cast component to a 3D printed design. And all this was done by using a co-simulation approach. Okay. I will run the video so that you'll get to know. I'm not sure whether the background music which was part of this video was audible to you all, and that was the reason why I had kept quiet. Were you able to hear the background music? I'm not sure.
No
But
audio,
anyways,
sir.
oh, there was no audio? Oh, I see. I'm sorry about that. Let me, uh, in order to play the audio again, I will have to unshare and then share it back.
Yes, okay. Start a new share.
Shall I do that, Professor Mane?
Sure, sure.
Sorry?
No need, sir.
No need. Okay, no problem. So, anyways,
You can do that.
this.
You can
Okay.
stop this screen share and reshare with the.
Yeah. Let me do that. Let me do that. I think now you will be able to hear it. by replaying that video, I could get time to sip a glass of water here. So I hope you could understand the complete workflow in that previous video, wherein to design and develop such kind of complex robotic system, which is an industrial application, they could actually all the different components of the system, the mechanical component, the electrical or the electronics component, and the controls into a single platform to design that. And the whole idea was to understand the right forces which are developed at that particular joint location, which is needed to redesign that control arm there. Not the control arm, the boom arm that you saw there. So once you know the exact forces, you can then do a topology optimization, which is a structural optimization discipline, which will help you to design a lightweight structure, right? And this lightweight structure was eventually 3D printed. So that was the whole process, which was designed by MX3D. Now moving on to the last part of my presentation, this is on the digital twin. Okay.
Sir, I
Yeah.
have a question here.
Yeah, please.
Sir, regarding what type of prototyping you will do, and you are also talking about ergonomics.
Right.
Tested because people have different dimensions. That patient is having different height, weight. Yeah.
Okay.
How it is considered?
Yeah, so you were talking about, I believe, the previous application on the nursing care lift, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, Mani, what we have to do is make sure that the system that we are designing for caters to a whole range of different people who are going to use this. And therefore, we'll have to have such let's say human models or the actual people who are going to be used for lifting that particular patient, right? So to understand the dynamics of the whole system, we need to make sure that such kind of human models are used. Very similar to the Sarcos robotics application that you saw, right? We can actually create these human models, and these human models are then simulated in the realm of what we call as inverse kinematics or inverse dynamics. By doing that, we will be able to understand the complete motion of different, let's say, people of different sizes, right? So when a particular person of a smaller height or maybe a hefty structure or maybe a taller guy is modeled using the human model approach, you will be able to understand what are the types of forces which are going to be witnessed in this mechanical system. And by doing that, you will be then
Sir, is it a physical model or
simulation model.
Okay.
Okay, so as you saw in that first application or the use case or case study of Sarcos robotics, you can have these robots, sorry, human models, which can be modeled and then used to understand the complete behavior of such a human model and use those conditions to design your structures. I hope I could answer your question, ma'am.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Let us go to the last topic that is on digital twin here. And to before we dive into that topic, I just wanted to explain a little bit on what we call as the PF curve. Okay. Now, for any physical system that we have on the field, based on the entire time period that it is in use, right? We can actually understand the condition of that asset, that physical asset, right? We can track it by planting sensors on that physical system and then understand what is the condition of that asset, right from the point of installation to the final, let's say, day at which you are going to look at that particular system. Now, typically, after you install it, when you have all the sensors give you data of the condition of the asset, it'll be streaming in data live to your software application. And then you will be able to look at your dashboards and see what is the condition of that asset. Now, there is a certain point on this PF curve, as we say, where you can probably understand the potential failure of this physical system at some point in that time period. OK, now, as you start getting in data from that physical asset, OK, you can actually build your machine learning model and then predict the remaining useful life of that physical system, right? So it can actually tell you, understand what is the potential failure after maybe 6 months or 1 year down the line. So you can then do predictive maintenance at a particular point P so that you can then improve that system so that it can extend its life beyond that time, right? So similarly, as in when you start getting in more and more data, you will be able to, on this particular curve, understand the system behavior and then perform a condition-based maintenance. Depending on the condition of that particular system, whether it is performing good or maybe not so good, you can then maybe perform some maintenance along that time period, right? And then finally, there is going to be one point on the curve where you can actually understand the functional failure. So during the course of that performance of that system, because of, let's say, the system getting heated up, and because of that heat which is generated, some of the components of that system are not probably going to perform better, right? So if you can get all that data, you will be able to do a preventive maintenance so that you avoid a catastrophic failure, right? So there is this point F on the curve, which you can then get to know maybe a functional failure point, right? So this idea of having to do a predictive maintenance or of a particular system by tracking that system and making sure that you've along its time of use uh, do a specific maintenance of that system so that you extend the life of that particular system is what is the need of the hour. And there are such systems in place now. Okay. Uh, and to do all these, whether it is a predictive maintenance or maybe a condition-based maintenance or a preventive maintenance, you can use a combination of different systems, whether it is an unconnected sensor with maybe machine learning, or maybe you can use IoT or IoT with artificial intelligence, or maybe a digital twin. Okay, so different platforms will allow you to do different types of maintenance based on at what position are you as a physical system over the time period and the performance of that system. Okay. Now, talking about machine learning, I'm not sure, probably you might have come across this particular word, and its use in various systems right now, which are being designed for. A machine learning, I am just trying to give you, yes.
Considering the previous slide, I have predictive maintenance.
I'm sorry, your audio is breaking in between. Can you please repeat or?
Can we have a?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm not able to hear you anything.
Either we can put up your question in chat, and we will take that question.
Yeah, maybe we can take it at the end. Please put
yes.
Because I'm not able to hear
Okay.
any audio from your side. Okay, so let me continue. I think I have maybe around 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. So I have 5 or 6 more slides. I'll quickly rush through this. In machine learning, which is a critical component of a digital twin, a machine learning can be segregated into 2 main disciplines. One is what we call as a supervised machine learning and an unsupervised machine learning. In the supervised machine learning techniques, in case, let's say you have a very structured data, you can either use regression-based models or classification-based algorithms, which will help you to use that structured data and help you to predict the performance of a system on the exact, let's say, optimal, let's say, optimized design for a particular system. Or you can use classification algorithms, which will help you to differentiate between a good and a bad. Okay, so because you might be having, let's say, a complex system, and a human in that system may not be able to differentiate between a good and a bad. So if you can build a machine learning model which will understand the data that is being gathered and differentiate between a good and a bad, there are algorithms which will help you to do that. Okay, in this picture that you see here, I'm sure mechanical engineers who are into finite element analysis will come or understand this better. That if you are doing a finite element analysis, there is either a chance that you might have a very good mesh, a finite element mesh, or you may encounter a bad mesh, right? If you are working on a very large complex model, if you are using, let's say, automated meshing tools, you may or may not have a good mesh. Okay, so if you can build a machine learning model which will go into each component of your large assembly and then differentiate between a good mesh and a bad mesh, and once you identify a bad mesh, you can then rerun the algorithm, the meshing algorithm, so that you can improve the mesh quality, right? So that is the application classification based machine learning algorithm. On the right side, you have unsupervised machine learning algorithms. And in this case, there are 2 ML models that you will come across. One is what we call as clustering. And this clustering ML models will help you to cluster or group all those components which are similar looking like or similar size or shape. Okay, if you have a very large system, let's say an automotive vehicle or an airplane vehicle, and you're at a design phase where you will have to group all these different components which are of the same size or shape, so that you can apply certain modeling techniques to model those different components. So these ML models will help you to cluster these different components into different groups, and then you can assign certain properties to those different components. So there are clustering algorithms which will help you to cluster them. And then feature extraction. So there are ML algorithms which will help you to extract features from your models, your your components or digital models, and extract features from these components and define them as parameters. Okay, so this whole idea of reading in multiple components at the same time, and based on the change in shape of each of these different features in a component, understand that there is a change in feature of each of these different, let's say, features in a component, and say that, okay, this is a feature which has changed between the multiple components, and therefore you can extract that feature and then define that as a parameter. Okay, so there are algorithms which will help you to do such feature extraction. Okay, so in all meaning, just to kind of broadly classify ML algorithms, these are the broad classifications. And once you have, let's say, the kind of data that you're going to use for developing your ML models. The data can be created on demand, or you can have data on hand. Now, what demand is that you don't have data, but you want to generate that data by running simulations. So if you can use, let's say, design of experiments kind of tools or algorithms from your existing design, you can create multiple different models, and these models can be run for various physics simulations, and the performance of those systems can be tracked. Now, once you do that, you will basically have a lot of data which defines the performance of your model. Uh, and this can be the data that you will probably use to create your ML models later. Okay. Or in cases where you already have data, either let's say simulation data or maybe physical test data or historical data, you can then read in such historical data and then create your ML models. Okay, this will of course need some cleaning to be done in cases where the data is not structured. So that for that there are tools which will help you to clean up such data and then use that data to build ML models. Okay. There are a few applications that are already available in CAE, computer aided engineering, and these are some of those applications that you're going to see. Here, what we have done is based on multiple, let's say, data that we had of this particular golf club. When you hit the golf club, the ball with the golf club, there is different performance criteria that you are measuring, right? And based on the changes in the design, the length of the height, the length, and the width of the golf club, you can look at the impact responses coming on the system, right? So once you have all this data, design of experiments data, you can then read in that DOE data into this ML platform, which will allow you to build a reduced order model. A reduced order model is a mathematical model which represents the behavior of the system when you are hitting the ball with the golf club, right? And once you build a reduced order model, which is also called as a meta model or a surrogate model, then you can build a very simplistic environment here, a slider environment, a dialog box, allow engineers to change the design by changing, let's say, the length, width, or height of the golf club, and even the shape of the golf club. Okay, by moving these sliders, and as you move these sliders, you can actually predict the performance of the system, the weight of the component, the performance of this golf club when it is hitting the ball, and all that. Okay. On the right side, here is another video which shows how ML models can be created, wherein you can import a very large system and then use this ML model to organize all those components which are similar looking like. Okay. So I've just picked one of these components, and then it'll identify similar looking components and then organize all of them into a single group. Okay, so all the ribs were identified and then brought into a single group. So now you can assign the same properties to those ribs. Okay. So this is all done by machine learning algorithms. So let me move forward. Now, there is certainly an advantage of using machine learning on a digital twin platform. Okay, now what we mean by a digital twin is definitely one particular, let's say, numerical model. Okay, a digital twin, which is an exact replica of a physical system that you have on the field. Okay. Now, what are the different building blocks which will allow you to connect your digital twin to your physical system and make sure that the performance of the physical system is tracked and it is improved upon. The performance of that physical system is improved upon. So these are the building blocks. Okay, you would need to build a 3D CAE model. Okay, you will need to have a reduced order modeling technique, okay, to run multiple simulations of your models, your digital models. Once you run multiple simulations of your digital models, you can then build a reduced order model using machine learning, and then use data intelligence, also have Internet of Things, and then use functional mockup interfaces to connect all these different disciplines together, right, into a 1D environment. And that 1D environment could be either signal-based approach or physical modeling. Okay. Here is the same application that was talking before of a ball balancing table. And our team was able to build a digital twin, uh, which was a replica of the physical system. And here you will see that they are basically running the simulation in the software platform, and even with any disturbance on that particular ball, we are able to track, and then the controls algorithm is going to give a feedback loop to the physical system and then rebalance the platform again so that the ball does not fall off the table. So this is a very classical digital twin, which explains the whole concept of how you can interact with the physical system uh, and the digital model. So finally, this is my last slide. What are the key takeaways, right? Uh, now, what you would need is a simulation model with, right? And that simulation model could be right from a 0D model, as I explained before, a math or a numerical simulation environment where you can develop the equation-based model, which is going to capture the physics of your problem and run the simulation using those equations. You could be having a 1D environment where you are going to use either a signal-based approach, a block diagram environment where you can use a signal-based approach, or a physical component approach, and connect all the components of that system and run a simulation. Or then you can even use a 3D simulation and do a co-simulation of all these different modeling techniques, 0D, 1D, and 3D. Okay. Now that is as far as a simulation model. Then you also have a physical asset, right? And that physical asset, you have sensors mounted on that, and you're streaming in data live, that operational data from that physical asset. And that is possible by using IoT, of having to read in that data and then push it back to the simulation model. Okay, so this connection between a simulation model, or what we call as a digital model, and the physical model is possible by using IoT. And using data intelligence, you can then tune the performance of the system in this unified multidisciplinary system environment. Okay. So the key takeaways are that you can optimize the entire product system performance of the system. You can seamlessly drive standard procedure, devices, tests, and simulations so that it is more end user specific. You can provide accurate requirements for device design, that is either structures, motions, and controls. And then finally, you can break silos, right? So what we were doing in the past in the traditional approach of running simulations within our own domain and not interacting with the other stakeholders of the product development process, this approach of model-based systems engineering will break those silos and help you to do a co-simulation between different environments, right? So these are the key takeaways of the model-based systems engineering approach, which is widely being used now for robotics and mechatronics applications. So with that, I end my presentation. I'll be glad to have an interaction with each one of you now.
Thank you, sir. Now we will keep the forum open for question and answers. So you may unmute and ask the questions.